Greetings, everyone. Hi, I'm Rashid. I'm the host of the Red Pill Diaries. I'd like to first, before we go live, thank each and every one of you for giving us another hour of your time and another day out of your busy lives. Thank you so much. It's very much appreciative. I also would like to ask you to subscribe, to like, and share the video. Before we go live, which will be going in just a few seconds, to my left or my right over here, which is your left, check out all of our social media platforms. Please remember to subscribe to those and go show your support. We hope to give you a powerful show. We thank you again for giving us the opportunity to come to you and give you unfiltered, unadulterated truth. Okay? Because we know in a time where lies prevail, truth is a rare, convenient, and truth is a rare commodity that we must use to get to the masses so that we can empower them with wealth, mental, spiritual, and emotional wealth as the world that we know dies out and as the governments that we know who rule the world try to enslave us mentally, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, and economically. On that note, thank you again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And also on all of our social media platforms here, go and do the same thing. We really appreciate it. Now, on to the fire. We're about to go live. Thank you so much. Peace. Enjoy. Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. This is the most powerful and informative platform, bar none, across the internet. I am your host, by God's grace and God's will, Rashid. Thank you all for giving us another hour of your time, especially in a time like this where you could be spending your time on foolishness, nonsense, and things that have no benefit for you. But you've chosen to view the Star and Crest, the Red Pill Diaries. Thank you so much. Now, listen, I want to say something to you all. There's so many things that are going on today. And I look at the hypocrisy of the world, the Western world specifically and especially, but the hypocrisy is not just confined to the Western world. You can look to the Eastern Bloc too, and there's a lot of hypocrisy and there's a lot of foolishness going on, you know. But the Eastern Bloc is moving in a way that is trying to build something better. But in reality, it comes out of necessity. It wasn't because most of us don't look at it. It wasn't because they were fed up with the Western world. It was because the Western world started targeting certain countries. Remember, as African nations tried to break free of colonialism, as Latin American nations tried to break free of colonialism, even as Russia lent the hand, and even as the Chinese lent the hand, they were not in a rush to get out of the dollar-based economic model, even though it is a debt-driven, debt-based system, because they were benefiting. But due to circumstances and due to the ineptitude of Western leadership and the incompetence of the Western leaders, it has forced a reappraisal of these nations that once benefited from dollar hegemony, that once benefited from American global hegemony, that once benefited from Western dominance to have a real appraisal, and then come, as they say on the streets, that come to Jesus moment or that come to Muhammad moment when they realize, hey, this is a debt-based system. It is predicated on division, dissatisfaction, exploitation, and domination. As it eats up these little nations, gobbles them up economically and politically and culturally, it will then need another host body to direct its anger at so that it can justify its expansion, so it can justify its mad grab for resources so that it can maintain its dominant position. This is what forced Russia's hand. This is what forced, in a certain instance, China's hand. Because when Iran was under sanction for 40 years, and Iran was trying to tell the West, hey, tell the East, hey, let's try to do this, this, and this. They weren't in any rush, right? It wasn't a rush for that. But when it hits home, this is what I keep telling y'all. It's one thing for someone to tell you, hey, this person right here is no good. This person right here is a backstabber, a liar, a thief, a con artist, this, and this. It's one thing for me to tell you that. And it's even one thing for you to see them do that to other people. But when the bullseye gets retargeted on you and you start feeling the ramifications of the madness of these people, then it causes you to pause, reflect, and do a real appraisal of everything that you see and everything that you thought was viable. This is what's causing the collapse of the Western world. This is what's causing the nations to jump ship and move towards the global South or the Eastern Bloc out of necessity. Some of them still want to do business with the Western world. Some of them still want to be a part of the Western Bloc, but they don't want to be subservient. They don't want to be subjected to the whims and ways and policies of America, the UK, and the Western Bloc. This is a problem in Russia. This is a big problem in Russia. You still hear them say at times, our Western partners, right? Show me where the West has partnered up with Russia in a fair and balanced way. Show me where the West has respected Russia's red lines and Russia's sovereignty and Russia's territorial integrity and Russia's national security interests. If they have not done that and refuse to do that even right now, how can they be your partners? Partner signifies someone who is in it with you to accomplish certain goals. As a matter of fact, let's go to it real quick since we're on this. You know how I like to do? I like to give you definitions of stuff. So, and we're going to get all into it. I want to thank everybody who's joining me from Rumble. I thank everybody who's joining me on Twitch. Everybody who's joining me on the Tube, which is YouTube. We're still having problems streaming to locals, but we'll have that solved, okay? But we're trying to do this, and we just had a problem with Rumble. Also, my son fixed it at the last minute, okay? And we're having problems with Odyssey to stream live too, but it's okay. Whenever there's a problem, you have the divinity within yourself, the godliness in yourself to overcome those obstacles if you're patient, rational, and focused on God. So it might not come in the time that you want it, but if you focus and you work hard, you'll overcome the obstacles. As a matter of fact, you'll run through them or run over them. All right? So let's look at something real quick. All right? According to the dictionary, according to Google's dictionary, the word partner means either of a pair of people engaged together in the same activity. Right? This is what it is, to be a partner of. So we know that America has no partners. You're either her so-called ally, which means that you are a junior minion of her policies. Think about this. Let's stop for a minute. She claims that the nations of NATO are her allies. Let one of them step out of line with her policy directives. See what happens. Let's just take a look at Turkey. Erdogan wanted, in certain instances, wanted to do something that was beneficial to Turkish national interests, to the Turkish people, right? That got him kicked out of what? The F-35 program, right? The U.S. waged a political and economic and psychological war against Turkey by trying to destroy the lira, causing interest rates to spike, and trying to destroy the Turkish economy. But Russia and China and Iran stepped in to try to alleviate some of the pressure of the Turkish lira and the Turkish economy. But they're partners. They're NATO allies, partners, right? Look at Germany. Germany, the second most powerful economy in the Western world, had to sacrifice its industrial capacity, its industrial base, so the empire can wage an unseemly, unjust, and irrational war to try to weaken Russia, with aims at breaking down Iran and China eventually. Would America have done that for Germany? Would America have done that for Turkey? Because being an ally and a partner is a two-way street. This is not a one-way road. But when you have that exceptional mind and you implement those exceptional policies, it's always me, and I. I think, I want. We should do this. And when you don't do what they say, guess what happens? They leverage every measure of power at their disposal to bring you back in line with their directives, as if Turkey, as if Germany, as if those other nations who are supposedly allies are a territory of the United States. These extra territorial laws, that's what sanctions are. You know that, right? Those are extraterritorial laws. That's when you try to force other nations to bow to your directives, to your agenda. I was looking at something. I can't recall the nation that America had sanctioned and sued. They sued them, and what else do you think? They won the lawsuit in U.S. courts. Listen, man, I'm telling you. Some of you guys don't examine this. America brought a case against a nation because, listen, they seized, I think it was Iran. I know Iran is one of the nations that I'm talking about right now, but I just want you to think about this. Let us use common sense. What did the Bible say? Come, let us reason together. Reason means that you take what God gave you, take what's around you, and then you calmly, yet intelligently come to a rational conclusion, right? So let's look. They said they seized oil and they sued, I believe it was Iran. They sued someone else, but they sued Iran and they sued another nation. The nation that I'm talking about, it skips my mind right now. So it might be a run-on between these two, but the point is still the same. So they levied a case, they seized the assets of the nation. They brought a lawsuit against that nation in U.S. courts. They won the lawsuit and then implemented sanctions to steal the assets and the oil that was seized. That's piracy. That's strong-arm robbery without a gun. Do you understand that? So I steal your stuff. You have a case against me, but I say, hold up, no, we're not going down to the Fifth Circuit Court or the courts in Florida or the courts in California. No, we got a court in my house where my son sits in the fourth bedroom, and we're going to bring it before my son, and we're going to see if what I say is legitimate. Now, I call the shots all the while. I've already told my son, hey, this is in our household's interest. You got to do this, this, and this. And then my son hears the case without, check this out, without you being able to defend yourself or bring any evidence on your behalf. And my son then rules in my favor, which is in his favor. And we keep the assets that we stole. Then we level a fine against you. Then we put a ban on you in the whole neighborhood and tell everybody, listen, you're relying on us for corn over here. You're relying for us for oil. I mean, for kerosene over here. You're relying on us for solar power over here. If you do trade with X, Y, and Z, we're going to cut that off. That's me imposing my dictates, my laws, and my judicial power that is supposed to be in my house to the entire neighborhood. Is that just? Is that fair? You know that's not just and fair. Come on. See, when people put this like this, you have no mirror. You have no curtain to hide behind. Because this is common sense. All right. Let me go to I see something in the comment section. Hold on one second. So listen to you all, everybody. You gotta excuse me if I'm slow to get to the comments. I'm trying to look at the stream, not StreamYard, but the Rumble also, because this is the first time I'm able to actually see the Rumble thing, and then I'm looking at something else, and I'm trying to make sure that everything is going on right. Okay, so I'll get to you eventually, but please charge it to my head and not to my heart. I'm not purposely and willfully ignoring your comments, and I will try to get to them. Okay, please do that. Maddie's in there. I see the last comment. He said, "It's okay. I'm babbling." Maddie is crazy. Anyway, let's go to something. I want you to think about that. The reality of the situation. How I just explained to you, and then I go and say, and I tell everybody in the neighborhood, listen, we have a collective neighborhood defense pact. If anybody comes to this neighborhood to try to rob, steal, or do anything to your house, we all come to your aid. But every time something happens, if it doesn't benefit me or suit me, I come up with excuses why we shouldn't do it. And then as soon as I feel that I can use that clause in our neighborhood charter for the benefit of me, I invoke it. Don't you think that I would be alienating the very people that I call my so-called partners and allies? But this is what America is doing on an international stage. On an international stage. And all the while she continues to talk about Iran maybe sending more weapons to Russia to fight in Ukraine. North Korea. And listen to this. So I'm reading an article a few days ago. And I just shook my head. I was like, man, these people are crazy as hell. So the United States, they have to get this photo op. Is with the Korean president. And for those of you who don't know, South Korea is under U.S. dictates. It's a colony of the United States. The United States has more military bases in South Korea than it does in the state of Alabama and Mississippi put together. You know that, right? Do you know that? Okay, now, on top of that, do you know that the United States has wartime control over the South Korean military? Did you know that? And do you know that the United States can ignore certain laws and rules that are brought to the Korean state by the people in the government? Did you know that? So if that's the case, in America's there and the people are protesting for America to leave the country, isn't she an occupier and a colonizer? According to definitions of that. I'm just saying. Before we get to the point I'm making, I'm just saying, right? So now we understand that part. Let's go to this part. So there was a photo opportunity. After Kim Jong-un, the leader of the DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the son of Kim Jong-il, who's the grandson of Kim Il-sung, the founder of the DPRK, when he was in Russia, and Russia was showing off military hardware and signing deals with the DPRK, the U.S. made it its business to have a photo op with the leaders of South Korea, and they threatened Russia that Russia and North Korea must pay a price for their exchange and friendship and ties and the possibility of weapons transfers. Now, Russia had been telling South Korea, oh my God, Reef Omar is in the building. My guy Reef Omar is in the building, man. Good to see you. But anyway, so Russia had been warning South Korea about giving weapons to the United States because South Korea was trying to skate around antagonizing Russia by saying we were going to transfer these ammunition rounds to this country or to the United States, and we're going to transfer these mortar rounds and these guided missiles and these radars, knowing that the destination was Ukraine and it would be used against Russian troops. So Russia had been warning them for well over a year about doing that. So now that Russia strikes up ties with North Korea, upgrades the ties. As a matter of fact, I want you to understand that now China has entered the fray, and there is a axis of North Korea, China, and Russia. You can go Google this. They're now saying that they have a strategic partnership. It was just a few days ago. But anyway, now check this out. So with that being said, they threaten sanctions on North Korea. How the hell can you sanction North Korea? You've sanctioned them for how many years now? Come on, man. Let's be honest. The sanctions is a ruse. It's a ruse for what the United States is really trying to do. She's trying to collapse the North Korean government so that they can use South Korea to push into North Korea. And guess what would happen? If the government of North Korea failed and South Korea was able to push into North and take North Korea, guess what would happen? China and Russia would be completely surrounded by the U.S. bases. You know that, right? Completely, all around. From Central Asia to the Caucasus, up to northwestern Europe, all the way around Japan, the Philippines, right? Singapore, you got, and then you go back up by Japan, you see the border where China, North Korea, and Russia meet. If South takes that, guess what happens? China is completely hemmed in. Russia is completely hemmed in. And guess what happens also? The United States gets access to the huge amounts of gold, silver, palladium, platinum, and rare earth minerals that they found in a study that North Korea has. South Korea has hardly any of that. North Korea has huge amounts of untapped oil, gas, and precious metals, and a huge amount of rare earth material. This is what is used in everything from TVs to dashboards to warplanes to warships, everything. And China has a monopoly on that right now of about 90 to 95%. And to collapse the North Korean government would allow America to take control of that. So they want to sanction North Korea by accusing North Korea of sending shells to Russia. And check this out. Within a couple hours later, they wanted to sanction Russia because they say they believe Russia was doing it to North Korea. Now, make up your mind. Come on. Is North Korea sending weapons to Russia? Or is Russia sending weapons to North Korea? And check this out. And if either of the two is correct, it doesn't matter, because guess what? The United States is the largest weapon exporter on the planet. So it shouldn't even concern you about the sovereign decision of two sovereign nations. You're scared that Russia may get some or North Korea may get some, but you're not scared to give South Korea something or Japan something or Ukraine something. You openly mock the nations. They say, hey, we're going to double down. We have a weapons package that we're giving to Ukraine. But you're able to do this, and that's okay. And you're trying to limit the largest nuclear power on the planet, Russia, from doing it. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. And Reef Omar says in the chat, let me highlight this real quick. I saw that Reef says sanctions don't even work for the U.S. anymore because more countries are trading outside the dollar. Boom. Mic drop moment. Mic drop moment right there. Listen, but guess what, Reef? That's what they do. That's what the United States does. It doesn't matter if it works. It doesn't matter. Because it was a symbol of power and U.S. reach, for 40 plus years. They're going to keep doing it. And look at this. The weapons that the United States is sending to Ukraine, how have they turned the battle? They haven't, have it? Has that stopped them from sending them? The Ukrainians say that the NATO trained standards suck. The way they've been trained with the U.S. and NATO is not the proper way to fight a war. So they're reverting back to Soviet methods of how to conduct war, because the Western way of waging war sucks now against a armed military power with modern weapons and modern doctrine. But does that stop the United States and NATO? As a matter of fact, let me see something. It was something that I saw earlier today. Where is it? Where was it, Nate? Hold on one second. I'm going to show you something to show you how silly these people are. Where is it? Give me 1 second. It was about, where's Jens Stoltenberg? He always puts his foot in his mouth every time you turn around. You know he's a sociopath anyhow. Let me see something real quick. NATO. Let's see if I can pull this up real quick. Give me 1 second, everybody. And everybody in the chat, again, thank you for giving me your time. Let me put this up by Medi. And I see you, Collie Beans, in there. Thank you for joining. It says, it is their affair. We can't talk. We are begging weapons from all over. That's what I'm saying, man. I'm going to leave this up here. For a minute. Everybody read that statement right there. He's talking about the United States in other people's affairs and how, on one hand, they're begging all these other nations to give them weapons so that they can put the weapons into the theater of war of Ukraine. And then at the same time, talking about what Russia or Iran or China or North Korea is doing. Man, stop this foolishness. Anyway, let me see something. Let me see if I can pull up Jens. There we go. This dude is crazy as bat mess. But anyway, so this is an article titled "Prepare for Long War, NATO Chief." Now check this out. Remember how the United States denies its involvement, and it says that it is not a party to the war in Ukraine. You know all of that talk. You know how European nations, aka NATO nations, continue to say that they are not a party to the war, but they just want to help Ukraine defend its sovereignty and its territorial integrity. Now, they don't have that same thought about Niger. How France refuses to leave Niger. The territorial integrity and sovereignty of Niger is ignored. But NATO is willing to give weapons, armaments, aid packages, and billions upon billions of dollars to protect the so-called sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. Man, if you don't get out of here with this madness. Check this out. Jens Stoltenberg has said that the conflict in Ukraine will not end until Russia lays down its weapons. Is this dude in Bizarro World? See, they say stuff that's good for the cameras, for them in the place where they reside. But when the average person looks at this madness, you got to know that he's detached from reality. You got to know that these people are sociopaths. Now, the war won't end till Russia lays down its weapons. We're going to finish reading this article, okay? But check this out. The United States has openly said that they're running out of weapons to give Ukraine. All of NATO has said they're running out, and Russia is out competing and out producing them in weapons, armaments, and artillery, right? Russia's economy has recovered from sanctions. The United States economy is in a depression. I don't care what they say about nearing a recession. If we have been in 16 consecutive months of a downward spiral, that constitutes a depression, according to all of the metrics. Europe has fallen into a great recession, or quote unquote depression. They're losing on the battlefield. In the last 2 or 3 months, Ukraine has lost over 70-some thousand troops. 70-some in just 2 or 3 months. Russia's losses is going down. Ukrainian, including the mercenaries, the so-called NATO troops that take off their NATO uniforms and then put on Ukrainian uniforms, their losses continue to skyrocket. So, but Jens Stoltenberg says that the conflict in Ukraine will not end until Russia lays down its weapons. That is like Mehdi and our fighting, right? And Reef comes in. Now, Mehdi has a gun, and I have some popsicle sticks. And Reef comes in and says, hey, the fight between you guys will not stop until Mehdi lays down his arms. Now, Mehdi has all the advantages. I'm bloodied up, I'm beat up, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, right? I have popsicle sticks trying to defend myself against Mehdi, who has about 3 guns aimed at me. And then Reef comes in and says it won't stop until Mehdi lays down his arms. This is what this fool is saying. Man, listen, I tell you. But see, if we don't look at it like that, we'll never, we never understand the true state of things. And Caliban said Jens Stoltenberg is from Norway and can't post comments to some destinations, and can't post comments to some destinations. Check this out. It says, here's some more of the article. Bear with me, everybody, and thank you again for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on YouTube. All right? We don't care if they take subscribers. We don't care if they don't send notifications. We don't care about none of that. All we care about is getting to the truth and being fair, just, honorable, and God-fearing. All the rest of that stuff will fall in line if you got that stuff. That's your armor plate. All right? Everything else will fall in line. So, this is what it said here. The West must prepare for a long war in Ukraine. Stop. I thought the West wasn't a party to the war. According to the U.S., according to Germany, the U.K., France, Italy, Spain, and all of the other so-called NATO nations, I thought that these nations were not a party to the conflict. And if they are not a party to the conflict, then why must they prepare for a long war? The only way that you prepare for the long war that you're not a party to is if you feel like you're about to intervene or you're already involved in it. Right? Is that not right? So it says the West must prepare for a long war in Ukraine, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg declared on Sunday. Despite claiming to want a quick peace in Ukraine, Stoltenberg insisted that he still supports President Vladimir Zelensky's goal of a military victory over Russia. Stop right there. Now, he said Vladimir Zelensky, the president, who was voted into office, but he was voted in, I want you to understand this because nobody talks about this. He was voted into office on a platform of bringing peace with Russia. That's how he came to power. Now, if we examine that, he came to power even through that vote without the whole entirety of the Ukrainian nation at that time, because others were not allowed or weren't permitted to vote, and some had left the country because of the coup. So even Zelensky being voted in a so-called democratic way does not legitimize the situation because he's an illegitimate president, because the real president, the one like what the United States and France are trying to impose in Africa, the real president was under the gun of assassination by the United States and NATO, and he was overthrown in a coup in the Maidan. So even though they continue to talk about the democratically elected Vladimir Zelensky, his election is still illegitimate because the president, the real president, resides in Russia, Yanukovych. To show you how much America talks about democracy and really is not about it, Yanukovych won. The United States wasn't satisfied with it. So they forced a rerun. And he won. And because Ukraine is corrupt, they tried to bribe him. And at the last minute, when he made his way, he said, you know what? I got a lot to lose. We'll try to join the European Union, but we want to do this with Russia. That was a no-go. They then set out to kill him. Not just to overthrow him, to kill him. Like they tried to do with Erdogan, when Erdogan bucked up against U.S. power, and that's an ally. Why is nobody talking about that? Why nobody? They talk about President Zelensky, but how did President Zelensky become president of Ukraine? And when you go into it, you'll see that even though he was brought to power through a so-called election, he is still not the legitimate president of Ukraine. Okay, let's go further. It goes and says, most wars last longer than expected when they first begin, Stoltenberg said in an interview with Germany's Funk Media Group. Therefore, we must prepare ourselves for a long war in Ukraine. Why must you prepare yourself? You're not a party to it. You're not a party to it. According to you, you're not losing troops. There are no NATO soldiers in Ukraine, according to you. So why is this preparing for a long war? Well, let's go further. According to media reports over the last 2 months, Western officials and military planners have conceded that Ukraine's ongoing counteroffensive against Russian forces is unlikely to succeed, leaving the front lines mostly unchanged as winter sets in. Well, that's a lie. Russia is making massive advancements all across the line. And when they pull back and Ukraine makes slight advancements, that's because Russia chose to pull back as to lure the Ukrainians and the Western mercenaries in so that they can slaughter them through artillery fire. This is true. Ask Scott Ritter. As a matter of fact, Scott should be on the show in the morning. We'll be doing a live show, 9 o'clock Central Time, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Scott Ritter will be on the show. Also, Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Time, 1 p.m. 12 noon Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll have Fox News columnist Martin Saif on the show also. And then we got a whole bunch of other people that we're trying to get the schedule right, okay? So you got to stay with it. And hit the like button, subscribe. Hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to share. Now let's go further. It says, according to Russian President Vladimir Putin, Ukraine has lost upwards of 71,000 men since the counteroffensive began in June. Despite this stark attrition rate, with some units losing 90% of their manpower. That means for every 10 people that Ukraine sends into battlefield, only one comes back. How are you preparing for the long war when these people are getting slaughtered at your behest? This is tantamount to crimes against humanity by NATO, the U.S. and NATO, by forcing this and continuing to push this. These are crimes against humanity. But let's go a little further. Despite this stark attrition rate, with some units losing 90% of their manpower, according to Ukrainian sources, Stoltenberg insists that NATO will continue to push for a military, not a diplomatic solution. So listen, NATO's not a party, but NATO's financing and arming it and sending in mercenaries and advisors. And NATO is pushing not for the diplomatic solution because they said they want the war to stop. But listen what it says. Stoltenberg insists that NATO will continue to push for a military, not a diplomatic solution. So how the hell you want the war to stop? Huh? So let's look at this. All right, give me a second. I wanna bring up something. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Listen, according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the word push, P-U-S-H, because remember, that's what Stoltenberg said. NATO will continue to push for a military, not a diplomatic solution, right? According to the dictionary, Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the word push means to press against with force in order to drive or impel, to move or endeavor to move away or ahead by steady pressure without striking. So they're using, he openly states, according to the dictionary, that they are using Ukrainian lives and forces as a battering ram, a sacrificial battering ram against Russia, according to the dictionary, right? I'm not making any of this stuff up. Google it. Google it. See, when you understand the definition of words, it makes conversation that much more easier to understand. Because these people, they are so psychotic that when they talk, they're talking to their colleagues. You think they're talking to you, but they use slight code words to try to convey something other than what you think they're talking about, but they're conveying it to the people that they respect, not you, because they don't respect you. Because how in the hell can they respect you with articles like this? I'm asking. How could a person respect you with articles with words like that in an interview? All right, listen. Let's go a little further. That's like I'm thinking. That's like me going to Mehdi and say, Mehdi, you know what? I respect you, man. I respect you. And all the while I'm saying I respect Mehdi, every time Mehdi goes to the kitchen to get some water, I'm all over his wife. I'm all over his wife and his 22-year-old daughter. How can I respect them if I'm disrespecting his loved ones? See, you got to start calling an ace and a spade a spade. In this world of madness, because this world, I call it the world of Walt Disney. Because Walt Disney and the movies from Walt Disney are an illusion. Feel good, happy illusion, contrary to the reality of life. And sometimes life is messy. Sometimes life is hard. Sometimes life is strenuous and backbreaking. And if you always address it in the manner of Walt Disney, you can never address the true causes and problems of life. Okay? So let's go further. It says, and thank you all again for joining the chat, okay? Thank you. And I know y'all, my chat is catching up with you guys' chat in there, okay? So I'm just getting some of the comments that you guys made just a few minutes ago. And also I'm watching the other chats too, okay? So charge it to my head and not to my heart, all right? And I'm especially Mehdi, a channel member, I'm going to highlight more of his stuff in a minute. Let's go further. He says, after that, he says, we are all wishing for a quick peace. Now, he says we're wishing for a quick peace, right? But the statement prior to that says that what? Stoltenberg insists that NATO will continue to push for what? A military and not a diplomatic solution. And what does push mean? To press against with force in order to drive or impel. Right? So, on the one hand, he tells you, no, this is a military solution. We don't want to talk about any end to no war, because diplomacy, a diplomatic solution, is talk, it's give and take, right? To ignore the diplomatic solution means that you want to force your will and your policy on the situation at hand. You don't want input by Ukraine. You don't want input by Russia. You want to force your dictates on the situation. That's why you want to push, to impel, to force, right? So, right after that, see, I told you they can't respect you. Right after that, I mean, it wasn't 2 paragraphs. It was 1 sentence later. You tell me these people respect you and respect your intelligence. 1 sentence later, he says, we are all wishing for a quick peace. We're all wishing for a quick peace. But prior to that, the sentence before, no, this got to be military. We cannot negotiate on this matter. It can't be diplomatic. So how the hell are you wishing for a quick peace? How can it be a quick peace when you continue to finance, arm, train, and then covertly operate in units that's waging war against the Russian Federation? They don't respect your intelligence. Now, it says, then he says this. He tries to clean it up a little bit. But at the same time, we must recognize if President Zelensky and the Ukrainians stop fighting, their country will no longer exist. If President Putin and Russia lays down their weapons, we will have peace. They want total capitulation from Russia. Now, I want you to understand what this means here. Russia is winning. They're winning the manufacturing war, the economic war, the trade war, the hydrocarbon war, the battlefield war, the artillery war, the air war, the naval war. On every level, they are winning. And the loser is trying to dictate terms to the winner. That's, let me give you an example. You know I'm the king of analogy. Now, you and I just got into a fight, Nettie. You beat the brakes off of me. Eyes swollen, back hurting, knee out of place, teeth missing, and you have the championship. And then I say, he has to fight me again, and he has to fight me on my terms. I want him to come to my city. I want him to give me 90% of the check. I want him to do this, this, and this. If he doesn't do this, then there's no fight. Well, man, it's okay because he's winning. But I want him to capitulate everything. I want him to capitulate the winner's table, the winner's prerogative, and the winner's spoils to me in order for him to beat the brakes off of me again. That's crazy, right? Well, if that's crazy, then why aren't you saying that's crazy for U.S. and NATO policy? Because all I'm doing is breaking it down for you to understand in your very life. That's all. That's it. That's all. As Gary Russell always said, that's it. That's all. Little Chucky. Anyway, so he says, if President Zelensky and the Ukrainians stop fighting, now I want you to understand this too also as we're talking. Because I hear this with a lot of major channels, okay? A lot of major channels do this. And to me, I think it's disingenuous, or either they're ignorant to the reality of the situation, okay? This right here. Now, they're saying that behind closed doors, America is trying to negotiate with Russia, right? And they're saying, but Zelensky and the Ukrainians won't do this, this, this. They won't accept this, this, and this, and this, and this, okay? I'm talking about, go look at all of the major, the ones with 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 subscribers. As the war continues to go bad, some of them don't even realize they're putting all of the blame on Zelensky and his generals. Well, it's an infighting going on. It's this going on. It's that going on. Now, that may be so. But now let's use common sense. Remember that phrase I told you at the beginning, that biblical phrase that God demands of each and every one of us when we call ourselves civilized? Come and do what? Let us reason together, right? Now, America has been the global hegemon for the last 60, 70, 80 years, right? The global hegemon. Since she has become the top dog, has she supplied weapons, training, intelligence, finance, and even troops to a nation and allowed them to buck up against her will? I'm asking you this because, see, we have to look at these things the right way. Zelensky won't do this. Now, you're telling me America is telling Zelensky to do something, he won't do it, and yet America is financing the entire military and governmental budget of Ukraine? If you don't get the flip out of here with that foolishness, stop this. So when these channels talk about this, either they're purposely and willfully misleading you, or they're ignorant to this matter and they shouldn't speak on it. Because there's not an instance where America funded something and she allowed you to buck up against her. Think about that. I'm going to ask the chat this. If I was totally dependent on you for finances, and you go tell me, hey, Rashid, I need you to go down the street down there. There's a little well down there. I need you to go get a bucket and go get this water and bring it back to me. I'm going to be around the corner from your house. I need you to do this. Now, mind you, listen, my total, everything, my livelihood, my wife, my children, my mothers, my sisters, my brothers, my nieces, my nephews, my grandchild, all of our livelihoods was totally dependent on your gratuity, on your benevolence. And I tell you, Mehdi, that ain't going to work for me. I'm not doing it. What do you think Mehdi's response would be? What do you think your response would be? You would cut it off, right? You would cut off the financial assistance, right? You would cut off the any kind of aid and help that you was giving me and my family, right? Well, why don't we look at that when we're talking about Ukraine? America has total control over the military and the financial purse strings of Ukraine. And if this is the case, then how can on one hand you tell me this is the case, and on the other hand you tell me that the Ukrainian generals and the Ukrainian president is bucking up against what America wishes? Remember when Saddam bucked up against what America wished? What did he get at Saddam? A couple of wars and then an execution? Huh? So don't feed me this stuff talking about Zelensky won't do this, or Zelensky is he came to the U.S. and he did this. And man, Zelensky is a puppet. Matter of fact, let me see something real quick while I'm talking to y'all. Give me a second real quick while I'm talking to y'all. Let's see if I still have that clip up here. Yes. I want you to listen to this. This from a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Listen to this. This is about 2 minutes. This is from Colonel Douglas Macgregor when he was on Fox News. Okay, I want you to pay close attention to this clip here, and then come back on the other end of this clip and tell me that Zelensky has any say so about the military policies, or Zelensky has anything to say about the financial and economic policies that America controls. Man, get out, man, stop this stuff. And any one of you that are members to other channels, I'm not saying to disregard them. I'm saying if they say stuff like that, you got to call them out on this, because that's not right. And that is willfully leading people down the wrong path when it comes to this. You're trying to clean it up where America is not at fault for the military loss. You're trying to clean it up where NATO nations are not at fault for the military loss, for the massive amounts of death, and for the destruction and the hell that they have brought to that region. We won't go for that in this day and time. No. Not on this platform. No. We're going to tell the truth. And as they used to say it when I was a kid, tell the truth. Truth shames the devil. All right? That's what we're going to do. So listen to this clip right here.
Douglas Macgregor, who joins us now. Sir, what's the strategy?
What you're seeing is that the Russians have now driven what is left of the Ukrainian forces, who are taking refuge in population centers, cities, because they have no mobility, no air defense, no air cover, no logistical infrastructure. They are now mingling with the population, much as we've seen in the Middle East. Whenever we drove the Islamists out of business, they ran into cities, used people as shields, the civilian population, and tried to avoid being annihilated. Russian forces, I think, frankly, were too gentle. They've now corrected that. So I would say another 10 days, this should be completely over. But the question is, what is it that Zelensky is going to do? The Russians have made it very clear what they want is a neutral Ukraine. This could have ended days ago if he accepted that. And then they can adjust the borders. But the eastern part of Ukraine is firmly in Russian hands. But again, the Russians are not seizing territory. They're destroying Ukrainian forces. That's their focus.
Colonel, it sounds like you don't approve of Zelensky's stand.
Oh, I think Zelensky is a puppet, and he is putting huge numbers of his own population at unnecessary risk. And quite frankly, most of what comes out of Ukraine is debunked as lies within 24 to 48 hours. The notions of taking and retaking airfields, all of this is nonsense. It hasn't happened.
He's not a hero when he's standing up for himself and his own people? You don't think he's a hero?
No, I do not. I don't see anything heroic about the man. And I think the most heroic thing that he can do right now is to come to terms with reality. Neutralize Ukraine. This is not a bad thing. A neutral Ukraine would be good for us as well as for Russia. It would create the buffer that, frankly, both sides want. But he's, I think, being told to hang on and try to drag this out, which is tragic for the people that have to live through this.
He's been told to hang on, right? He's a puppet. This is what Colonel Macgregor has said, right? He said this over a year ago, right? Now, we're going to go back to this article that I just read, part of it. But before we do that, he called him a puppet. So that means he's a puppet leader. So we got to understand something. What is a puppet leader? And you know, on this channel, on this platform, we won't allow you to be ignorant of the reality of what's going on. So we give you definitions of words so that you can understand it just as well as I can, okay? So that we can't play with shades of meanings or anything like that. We will understand what it really is and not what we would like it to be or what we thought it would be. We're going to do it the right way. So, according to the dictionary and according to the Wikipedia, they had something about a puppet ruler. And this is the explanation that they gave for, or definition for, a puppet or puppet ruler. Okay? A puppet ruler is a person who has a title indicating possession of political power, President Zelensky, but who in reality is either loyal to or controlled by outside individuals or forces, the UK, the US, right? All right? Such outside power can be exercised by a foreign government. What foreign government? Who's the most influential and most powerful and most disruptive foreign government on the planet? Well, it's twofold. It's the United States and the United Kingdom, right? So let's go. It said, in which case, the puppet ruler's domain is called a puppet state. So now we got to look at Ukraine as a puppet state, and we got to look at Zelensky as a puppet ruler, and we have to look at America and the UK and quote-unquote NATO as the puppeteers, okay? According to the dictionary. So let's go back to this article, because I'm going to play that statement again by Mr. Macgregor, because there's something to what he said at the end, okay? So he says, in this article, it says, after walking away from a Turkish brokered peace deal last April, Zelensky issued a decree forbidding all negotiations with Russia. Stop right there. What? Zelensky issued a decree forbidding all negotiations with Russia. Now, there's something to that, because prior to that decree being issued, the United States and the UK were saying that they did not want Ukraine to enter into negotiations with Russia. As a matter of fact, Boris Yeltsin went to Ukraine to stop peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. So now we have foreign entities, right, that intervened to stop any negotiated settlement. Now let's go back up to the beginning of the article. All right. What did Stoltenberg say? He said, and this is very important, we are all wishing for a quick peace, Stoltenberg said. But at the same time, we must recognize if President Zelensky and the Ukrainians stop fighting, their country will no longer exist. If President Putin and Russia lay down their weapons, we will have peace. Now check this out. Let's go up. Let's go up. Okay? He says, according to the media reports over the last 2 months, Western officials and military planners have conceded that Ukraine's ongoing counteroffensive against Russian forces is unlikely to succeed, leaving the front lines mostly unchanged as winter sets in. According to Russian President Vladimir Putin, Ukraine has lost upwards of 71,000 men since the counteroffensive began in June. Despite this stark attrition rate, with some units losing 90% of their manpower. That's 9 in every 10 people. According to Ukrainian sources, this is not Russian sources, these are Ukrainian sources saying that 9 out of 10 Ukrainian soldiers are being slaughtered on the battlefield. Stoltenberg insists that NATO will continue to push for a military and not a diplomatic solution. So when we hear that part, we go back down and it makes sense. Zelensky issued a decree forbidding all negotiations with Russia. Why did he do that? Remember the definition of puppet leader? A puppet ruler is a person who has a title indicating possession of political power, but who in reality is either loyal to or controlled by outside individuals or forces. Such outside power can be exercised by a foreign government. We heard what NATO said. We heard what the U.S. said prior to the decree being issued. We heard what the UK said prior to the decree being issued. So it was their decree and their policy, and it was issued through their front man, Zelensky, right? It says, in which case the puppet ruler's domain can be called a what? Puppet state. So we have a puppet leader in Zelensky, and we now have a puppet state, which is Ukraine, ruled by puppeteers, which are the United States, the UK, and NATO nations, according to the very definition of the policies. So let's go back to what Mr. McGregor said. All right.
Douglas McGregor, who joins us now. Sir, what's the strategy?
What you're seeing is that the Russians have now driven what is left of the Ukrainian forces, who are taking refuge in population centers, cities, because they have no mobility, no air defense, no air cover, no logistical infrastructure. They are now mingling with the population, much as we've seen in the Middle East. Whenever we drove the Islamists out of business, they ran into cities, used people as shields, the civilian population, and tried to avoid being annihilated. Russian forces, I think, frankly, were too gentle. They've now corrected that. So I would say another 10 days, this should be completely over. But the question is, what is it that Zelensky is going to do? The Russians have made it very clear what they want is a neutral Ukraine. This could have ended days ago if he accepted that. And then they can adjust the borders. But the eastern part of Ukraine is firmly in Russian hands. But again, the Russians are not seizing territory. They're destroying Ukrainian forces. That's their focus.
Colonel, it sounds like you don't approve of Zelensky's stand.
Oh, I think Zelensky is a puppet. And he is putting huge numbers of his own population at unnecessary risk. And quite frankly, most of what comes out of Ukraine is debunked as lies within 24 to 48 hours. The notions of taking and retaking airfields, all of this is nonsense. It hasn't happened.
He's not a hero when he's standing up for himself and his own people? You don't think he's a hero?
No, I do not. I don't see anything heroic about the man. And I think the most heroic thing that he can do right now is to come to terms with reality. Neutralize Ukraine. This is not a bad thing. A neutral Ukraine would be good for us as well as for Russia. It would create the buffer that, frankly, both sides want. But he's, I think, being told to hang on and try to drag this out, which is tragic.
But he's being told to hang on and try to drag this thing out. In that article, what? Did we read? Huh? We are all wishing for a quick peace, Stoltenberg said. But at the same time, we must recognize that if Zelensky and the Ukrainians stop fighting, their country will no longer exist. If President Putin and Russia lay down their weapons, we will have peace. Listen to what it says. Prior to that, despite this stark attrition rate, with some units losing 90% of their manpower, according to Ukrainian sources, Stoltenberg insisted. That means he was conveying something. He was very adamant about something. What was he adamant about? Implementing U.S. and U.K. policies on the battlefield in Ukraine, right? According to what we know. And what was this policy? Stoltenberg insisted that NATO will continue to push for a military solution, not a diplomatic one. Right? Is that all right? We have it right here. I'm reading it to you in real time. The name of the article is titled Prepare for Long War, NATO Chief. It's on Russia Today. It was published yesterday, September 17th. Okay? And it was published that way. I can't read that right now. It's going fast. I'm scrolling. But anyway, so I'm not making anything up about this. Listen. Yeah, let me put this up on the screen real quick. Let's see. Man, this thing is scrolling so fast. All right. It won't allow me to highlight this at this moment. Maybe I have to refresh the screen. But anyway, when it does allow me, we'll go back to this. But check this out. Have I made anything up? Have I infused these articles with any of my own personal opinion? Of course, I gave it to you from me, but I read it as it was, and I gave you the definition so that you could understand exactly what they were conveying to each other and what was actually going on. And I want you to understand something. All while that is going on, where's that? Let me pull this up. Where is it at? All while this is going on, let me see if I can pull this up. Is it on? Oh, okay. Here we are. America is imploding. I was looking at something. Let me see if I can pull this up also. It was about Britain. Okay. It was about Britain. Let me see if I can find it. And we'll see how it mirrors the U.S. Where is it? It talked about the economic situation that Britain now finds itself in. The UK now finds itself in. Now, let's see if I can find it real quick. If I can't find it real quick, I'm gonna paraphrase and I'm gonna tell you. Let's see. A lot of these articles I like. I see them and then I'll email the headline back to me so that if I talk to you all, we can read it together. Okay, and then we can break it down together so that we'll be learning together. But I'm trying to see if I can find it. UK. I know it's over here somewhere. I just saw it. Anyway, I'll keep scrolling for it. But anyway, it talks about the terrible plight that the UK economy now finds itself in, and how the UK economy is imploding, and they're heading into a deep recession. Now, but they can find money for war, money for weapons. The same with the United States. Everything is falling apart in the United States, and they're still talking about aid packages to continue this war. I want you to look at this. This is an article on Michael Schneider's The Economic Collapse blog. It was printed. It was printed. Man, so many I'm up here. God, dog, is a lot of these good articles. It was published September 12th, 2023. And this is my first time reading it. So I'm going to read it with you all. I'm going to read part of it, okay? Let me click on it so I can read it with you. Now, this article is titled, "The Middle Class is Increasingly Becoming the Impoverished Class, and the Poor are Increasingly Being Pushed into the Streets." Now, mind you, these tens of billions of dollars in aid packages that goes to Ukraine, would be better spent on education, on upping the pay of the stewards of our future generations, which are teachers. Teachers are the stewards of the future generations. They are the ones who are supposed to craft and mold the thought in the minds of the younger people so that they can produce, build, and advance society. But when you defund the educational system, you defund the future of a republic. Do you understand? So what you're doing is causing the destruction of America's educational system, which in turn leads to the degradation of America. The morality fades, ethics disappear, and you have an immoral, unethical society that's all about me, as the entire system becomes eviscerated through corruption, greed, and exploitation. Now, listen to this. And all of you who are listening, you might hear a little noise in the background. I have this window up a little bit. I'm trying to make sure the chickens are okay out there. Anyway, but check this out. And you'll hear people pass, well, not people, but a few people that live in the neighborhood. Not many live in the neighborhood over here, but you'll hear a few of the kids. And you might hear mine. But listen, this is what it says here. America's middle class is being systematically eviscerated. Hold on 1 second. Let me show you something. Give me a second here. Uh-oh. What did I just do? Give me 1 second, everybody. Now, according to the dictionary, the word systematically is taken from the word systemic or system, and it means it's an adverb. It means according to a fixed plan or system, methodically. This is what it means. So now it says America's middle class is being methodically, right, eviscerated. When the Federal Reserve pumped trillions of dollars into the financial system during the pandemic, most Americans didn't realize what that would do to them. That money certainly made the wealthy a whole lot wealthier, but it also dramatically increased the cost of living for the rest of us. So now inflation has been rising much faster than paychecks have, and the cost of living has become exceedingly oppressive. In fact, last year, we witnessed the largest decline in real median household income in more than a decade, right? The official tally is in, and it is brutal. Americans suffered the biggest drop in household income in 2022 in a dozen years. Real median household income was $74,580 in 2022, a drop of 2.3% from the prior year, the Census Bureau said Tuesday. This is the biggest drop in household income since 2010, when household income fell 2.6%. That means it is worse than the pandemic decline of 2.2%. It is the fourth worst year in records going back to 1985. Now, what's important about those 2 days right there? 2010. Remember, 2010 is when the so-called 2008 crisis was really. In 2008, they masked the crisis, and it started rearing its ugly head again in 2010. 1985 saw something similar to that. And America masked it again. They kicked the can down the road. Now we're at the dead end street. You can't kick it. You can't throw the can because the buildings are too high. And now you got to deal with that inflation monster that you've created. All the while, you can find billions of dollars for war games, provocations. You can do that. But you can't allocate $20 billion. You can't find that to alleviate and eradicate homelessness. You can't find another $20 billion to eradicate poverty. Yet you gave Ukraine over $200 billion to prosecute and persecute a war against Russia. Your infrastructure is crumbling. Your educational system is in disrepair. The morals have declined. No ethics, no regard for life or the sanctity and security of life and property. Violence everywhere as far as the eye can see. The nation is devolving into a savage nation. A savage nation. You have savage policies. Listen to me good. Again, I continue to tell you that America's domestic policies mirror her international policies. She is a savage internationally. She doesn't respect national borders, cultures, sovereignty, none of that. And she will do anything to impress upon those people her policy and her will. Now, the savagery of her policies are being seen domestically. They're starting to bite the people domestically. There's something in it. They're starting to bite the people domestically. Give me a second for us. Give me 1 second. I want you. Give me 1 second. According to the dictionary, the word savage, an adjective, it says of an animal or force of nature, fierce, violent, and uncontrolled, ferocious, fierce, wild, untamed, undomesticated, feral, severe, crushing, devastating, crippling, terrible, awful, dreadful, brute, beast, monster, barbarian, ogre, demon, sadist. Aren't those descriptions that other nations use when they describe America's foreign policy? And now aren't the people in America starting to describe America's domestic policies as ferocious against the very people who they are supposed to be implemented to help? Aren't they saying that the people have become savage in Congress, not respecting the will of the people? They say that America has entered a severe economic crisis, a severe moral crisis, a severe ethical crisis, a severe cultural crisis, something to the likes that it is crushing the republic, according to the people, right? It has become devastating to the progression of the nation state, right? And it is crippling the very people who are the inhabitants of that nation state. It has become terrible to talk about, awful to think about, and dreadful to imagine, right? Savage. Savagery. That's America, right? Man, come on. You know I'm telling you guys the truth. You know I'm telling you guys the truth. So, again, let me highlight this. Reef Omar. America is in the carnal grip of savage psychosis. You understand what he's saying to you guys? This is what I just pointed out in the dictionary, the definition of it. We use the clips, we use articles, and we use the dictionary to try to make you understand where we are. We're in an inflection point right here for the American Republic. And listen, the people in power don't reflect. The people in power can't reflect. They're in savage mode. They think that every cry is against them. You know, when you've done so much dirt and you've done it ad nauseum and you've done it without ramifications, when the spill back or the spillover comes back to you, you start getting paranoid, right? And rationality leaves you, so you're not rational anymore. That's what's happening to the leadership. They're irrational. That's why their policies don't work. That's why they continue to alienate not only their enemies, but their allies. That's what irrational, unsound people do. They implement irrational, unsound doctrine, which is a detriment and a destructive blow, as that definition of savagery says, to the livelihood and the progression and the stability of the republic or the nation state. You might not want to hear this, But I got to tell you, we're living in the fall of America, the decline of the dollar, and the end of Western domination. I mean, you never thought this day would happen. You never thought you would have sociopaths running the, and look, they have the foxes running the hen house and saying that the foxes will be okay. I mean, the hens will be okay. We're not going to eat them. That's what's going on in Washington, D.C. And now you're seeing the hen house is in chaos because the foxes feel that they have a free hand to exploit the hens without the guard dog. That's what's going on right in front of us, right here. Listen, everybody, thank you for giving me your time. We're going to try to do a live stream either tomorrow or sometime this weekend on Patreon. We're trying to work out that too. We're going to try to start streaming sometime exclusively to Rumble, and then we're going to try to do some exclusively to locals. Join the locals. It's free. It's free. Go over there and join the locals. It's the empowermentoftruth.locals.com. We'll have Scott Ritter in the morning at 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll have Fox news contributor Martin Saif on Thursday, and we got a whole lot of guests lined up in the coming future. Please, guys, like, subscribe, tell others about us, spread the word, because they're going to unsubscribe you. And always check and see if they've unsubscribed you, and hit the bell icon also, okay? On that note, know that I love you if you love truth, but know that the true and living God, he will always love you better. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous, because righteousness is the only vehicle that will get you out of this madness. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you for joining me. I'm out of here.